Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is, how do I stop? Or, and I'm going to add this in there, prevent codependent triggers? That's a great question. We're really going to unpack that. We're going to really take a look at it because when people are triggered, they become annoyed, angry, shaky in their lower emotions. They're not putting on their best. They're sort of really controlled by other feelings, which really disempower or can be very destructive in relationships. And as life goes on, you're going, you know what, I got to change something up here. I'm noticing a discomfort, and you're ready to get the lever on it because the pain is great enough, or at least there's something about you that is noticing something's off or there's a red flag. So it's a great question. But before we get started, I just want to give a huge shout out to those of you who have recently donated to the channel. Long time listener, member here in the Peace and Harmony channel, DF, you know who you are. Thank you so much for your donation. Wonderful to hear from you. And thank you so much for your contribution, your wonderful insights, your sharing, and your support. And really going down that long-term road of happiness, that long-term road of fulfillment where you're like, you're just feeling good, and you're feeling good more often than not. And that's where we really want to get our scope, our focus, our agenda, okay, out from being hidden and knowing what really makes our heart tick, especially when we're coming off of relationships that are narcissistic, psychopathic, pathological, sort of destructive in nature. We're not talking about the casual, the person wasn't nice. We're talking about a recurring set of predispositioned behaviors that then set up others to be manipulated, made more vulnerable, meaning weakened, not sort of in touch. And then the difficulties that can ensue for that individual. But the problem is the perpetrator, the narcissist, the psychopath, continues to perpetrate in many sundry and varied ways. So, and also, as we get started in this discussion here, I want to give a huge shout out. Great to hear from you, TM. Great, and thank you so much for your donation and support. It really helps keep the lights on, keep the heart going, keep us in touch, which really relevant to you. And the channel is designed to help people kind of come back into their own, come back into an undisturbed body and state of being, meaning that it's not set off by situations, environmental presence, environmental conditions, circumstances. These don't throw the healed person off anymore. When we get to that long range goal, we're talking about really being able to drop and let go. So like a shoulder bag that probably you've been carrying. Anyone ever lifted or traveled and carried, it's like you've done it so many times. Your arm is still like this. You've held on, or part of you is always sort of closing off, or it inhibits you. Certain feelings hold you back from being or exploring and becoming more, because part of you is still sort of in an estranged way attached to something energetically that this relationship dynamic, as our long-term member DF says. A dynamic, it is an interplay of energy. We need to look at things in sort of a heightened way so we can set it down, the situations and the triggers aside, to look at them. And what does this mean? This is a conscious exercise. So in the privacy of this video, what does it mean to want to release or let go the codependent triggers? Okay, meaning something is setting you off unbeknownst to you, or really out of your control. It's an automatic pilot, okay? It's on drive and you're going there, whatever your pace is, 120 miles an hour. Maybe you're taking it so slow, you're going half a mile an hour and you're wondering why you aren't getting where, or you're wondering why you're so jacked up and maybe triggered and sort of it's made you want to leave, get away, not be present, not engage, especially socially or in the workplace, or rise up in terms of what we call like an empowered present, meaning what does it mean to sort of clear that sludge away and call it at sludge, for a moment, to quiet the trigger. Because you have to be able to understand that this sets people up for a depletion, which necessitates sort of an addiction, a holding on to this traumatizing sort of predatory experience where your boundaries were made null and void, meaning not existent. They're helping themselves to you whatever time, day or night, and you're just, you're like a rag doll. You feel that then as a way of coping and adapting, sort of because of that just sort of escalator into your life. People then sort of don't realize that what is happening in the moment, meaning you're emotionally and physically blind, or you're rendered vulnerable or helpless, meaning not equipped to handle the situation. You're 8 years old and the parents are fighting about things obviously you have no control over. You're not paying the bills, you're not cooking the food, you're not keeping the lights, the heat, the roof on, and you're not the one saying, yeah, we got to keep it at 53 degrees. This is uninhabitable in here because we're trying to save money, or whatever grievances that sort of left people in a vulnerability. And to look at this, meaning the vulnerability does not have to be like a lifelong corruption or corrosion or weakening, depleting of a space within that you want to inhabit on a more regular, consistent, ongoing, with repetition and experience basis. Meaning, if people didn't think you were so crazy, you can get your tablet out here, okay? If people didn't think you were so crazy, I would really love to become better at. If people didn't think I was so crazy, I would really love to become better at. And you're like, this just really suits me. But, even though it seems so far out of reach, would I truly have learned that my better feeling is, and this is why I'm not pursuing it. Okay, so in other words, if we can let down, okay, you can always come back to being afraid. In healing, I feel it's very important to remember Albert Einstein, you can't simultaneously prepare and prevent for war. In other words, you have to set down certain feelings or emotions that might be a real driver in your life. I mean, you're like this is all of me, peace and harmony. Like I'm really scared. Like, it can be very terrifying to separate and get some sort of space and empowerment from within even a life whole, like your whole life. If you've been around someone who's like a automotive sander, like one of those sand bulbs. Did you ever take a class and like you were learning how to like do like it was a grinder thing and you were like shaping ornaments, or it was like an art class and you wouldn't get your hand too close to it because it would take your skin off. So kind of when you're in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath, you're kind of coming real close to that sandpaper belt that's going like 30 miles an hour. You know what I'm saying? If you can't just imagine it, in other words, there's some friction. It's taking a layer of your skin and muscle, and if you kept pushing, you would really damage your hand. In fact, you might have to go to the hospital, and your pain would then override, but you'd still be connected to that situation because of the intensity of the feeling. Okay, so in other words, what really is significant to people is it makes an indelible mark. In other words, no matter what I do, it's always there, and it's sort of like an enemy. You might give it a name. Someone who is against you, like a feeling that is against me. You always have to sort of prepare for. If you and looking, we've got that list. So you've got within you, and you must accept before the gift is given. I think you must accept that you can step away from the intensity of this feeling and what it has done, meant, created, caused, okay, shaped, molded, created, been responsible, got me, took me, made me. And then if you notice, there's an externalizing of this intensity. Okay, if you've been sort of violated, meaning there's no I am that could have done anything to stop it. So it's just realizing that then there's an externalizing oftentimes of, or not accepting of certain B states for fear of retaliation or conflict with the value of the other intense situation, the abuser, the psychopath, someone who has basically taken you for not even a fool, not even a ride, and not even a journey. It's very difficult to assign a meaning, but that one involves a certain level of deception and tactics that were designed to manipulate and take advantage, in other words, shut you down. You were too young. How can you learn how to settle the finances of a family? You hear people fighting. I mean, kids know. And then you got one parent who leaves, or, in your workplace, you hear about all this going on and you're like, oh my God, what's happening in this department? And you're just sort of always sort of trying to go down in the bunker and crouch down and sort of stay under the radar because other things are popping and it could cause, you don't want to, you can't, it's not your place for initiative. In other words, you are learned, it's a learned helplessness. You have learned. So this is what it's really an indelible mark, which means it's made a mark on your being. But your being, that very concept, is stronger than the act, meaning your healing space does not have a mind-body connection to the abuser. Well, okay, meaning there's a space, there's a way to sort of get a little bit of breathing room in there. And it's very difficult for people to unlearn, because deep in their deepest reservoirs, they might feel, in codependency, that this person is responsible, their approval, their pleasure, their smile, their invite, their hug, their culture. It can be this engulfing, meaning all consuming, like it just, if as if you were just standing on a beautiful Bahama warm 92 degrees day in the incredible crystalline sands, and you're like, you've never seen such a turquoise blue water. People who live there, and you're looking at it and you're going, but then all of a sudden, here comes this tidal wave and completely sweeps you asunder, completely engulfs you and carries you away with it. Okay, that is a similar feeling to an emotional engulfment, enmeshment, codependency. These are some terms we want to look at now, which these are B states. Okay, just like the United States, okay, these are B states. Okay, if you could get like a cool, big rainbow with unicorns and, different things, these things that you see or feel, these are B states. So being states, that is only able to be tread upon the present area, almost as if it's the golden Bermuda Triangle that you've been trying to if you could just get there, all of a sudden there'd be this feeling, and this all of a sudden gets hampered, or it never happens, and then people find themselves grinding or burning out, or like just not growing, feeling stifled, stagnant. Because this sort of the psychopath without a conscience, who utilizes other people literally for food, for matter, for fodder, basically for what they make their fuel, consuming their psychopathic being. They need people who are vulnerable. They might chuckle to themselves, this is such a low-hanging fruit, this one is so dumb, or this one is so nice, this one will they have all these conversations, so they know who to target. I've likened this before. So in other words, if you've been engulfed, which means it really took your whole vision and your whole being, which means you by default were required, could not go past go if you were not that people pleaser. You did not have an option. If you're in a pattern, or were, but it feels like the present, for any even length of time, it can even be very severe for a couple of days. It doesn't matter. In fact, a lot of these, there was just something in the news about a nurse, and this is a good example for present day. There was just an example today about a nurse in Colorado, a male nurse, who is now in really big trouble for perpetrating interspecies predator behavior towards said female patients in an intensive care unit. Okay, if you're in ICU, you're not like doing the mamba and drinking a milkshake after you got your tooth pulled, you're basically on anesthesia, or you're sedated, or you've got something that's very delicate. And to those very vulnerable people, you must realize that even the abuser, even though they can't allow that innocence of your being, you might have never even tread there on that ground within, which means it's a feeling, which is what the recovery dates are for, of that intrinsic feeling of being able to be and observe without being flinching, flailing, or like a knee-jerk reaction because of this history, or because of this repetition of your experience. So you might have been felt, and you can own up to this and don't be afraid. You might be built from the bottom up to be a people pleaser, which means you don't feel you're living your life to the fullest. You kind of feel that your life can only go so far. It's maybe a dead end. It feels like it doesn't have something that it's looking forward to. It's planning. It's feeling strength. It's looking, confidence, maybe with someone. Or remember, if people didn't think it was so crazy, I would really love to. And this is not with anybody's, feedback. This is just for you to know, for your eyes only. Does there exist something when you're being abused? Your eyes only. There's a brainwashing. You're too sensitive. This is just how people are in their teens, their 20s, their 30s. This is how it's going to be, kid. You don't realize that there's this sort of feeling that then there's an owing. If there's a trigger, which means there's something in you that feels like it hasn't mastered something even maybe like an addiction, poor finances, bad decisions, bad eating choices, bad self-care choices. You have to own up to it. You might be procrastinating. These are all lies then that just run like a reel into one's head. That's called erroneous thinking. People get very afraid, and it's because there's a lot of payoff to not confronting, not looking, not being, and understanding what that little teeny tiny minuscule being, whatever that, it could be like a mustard seed. It could be one little belief thought, one little baby of a thought that goes, I want to be happy. I want to travel. Whatever it is. I want to be in art. I want to, and be, and then it's be, okay? And you need to develop you're going in healing. When we work on these, you're going to be developing a better ear for your own calibration. Meaning, once we look at those triggers, codependency, making your life all about taking care of others to the point of the annihilation of any support for you yourself. Isn't it always easy? They're always the good looking one. So, so you might have been living, on a codependent lifestyle, which or you felt was your identity. Meaning you know how to do this very well. You've got a great skill at being a people pleaser, okay? It's just like learning to sweep the floor. Once you get really good at it, it's kind of like, is there something more for me to learn? Not that you want a big, super huge challenge, but there is this feeling then of there's something, it might be feeling like it's gnawing, but either way, you have to get some separation and some being gentle, okay, with looking at the trigger and not being afraid of like losing, quote unquote, the payoff or its meaning, without being, like you're forcing yourself into that grinder anymore. And you want to now consciously stop making these mistakes. You're seeing things from the perspective. In other words, people are protective of their abuser for this reason, meaning, they were older, so I probably should have. There's part of then the vulnerability. I mean, like a patient, you're supposed to be in total care, okay? It's okay to have, because the people will either idealize or completely degrade their abuser without getting sort of a self-aware sort of B combo of that type of energy, as it's separate and distinct from who, what, and where you are and why you are, okay? Even though, you might have felt that burn and that burn drove you for your entire life, and it's been a motivator, okay? People are afraid, well, this caused the whole trajectory of my life. I mean, this was me as a teenager. I've been out of high school for 30 years and it's still me. Well, hey, guess what? You were kind of tapped out you were just, maybe, I don't want to say like the hamster in the wheel, but have a vision of yourself knowing that you were engulfed, but now you're kind of walking out of that water a little bit. You're kind of like, can I look back and sort of see the light? Can I have a feel-good perspective about it, but to the point where I don't lose my passion, but I'm able to set aside those pacifiers which were sort of keeping me in that grind or trying to still heal the wound. In other words, I want to get a little bit more solidified, stronger. What does this mean? How does it feel? What are the implications? Why do I keep pushing it away? If people didn't think I was so crazy, I would really love to. And we're talking about the positive. So just ignite a little bit of that so you can hear from within a little bit more rather than sort of that automatic lifestyle that takes you into maybe something that you're saying isn't for me right now, and that's okay. You're not the same body, mind, spirit that you were. Okay, you have to acknowledge and validate that there's a new energy that's come about, and those negative feelings which are triggered really need to be dealt with, and really need to be understood and sort of processed. And you need to then be able to understand that the healing is going to come from a different thought pattern, B state, heal breath, and muscle stature, which means you're not just sitting there ready to punch somebody. You're not there ready to show how, a lot of these defensive, offensive states, feeling if you don't do that, you look like a weakling, you look like an ugly duckling, whatever, and the triggers, which means instead of, putting down those little twinges of I better do this. When you say, you know what, I could become a people pleaser, I could become completely distracted, I could lose my ambition, I could just say, and then continue to say, let me give it all to you because you're the better looking one, you're the adult, let me, so there's a lot of this conformity that had to happen and would have might have felt like originally as a pressure. So looking at that now, we need to realize that pressure is not do you have this like wallpapered all over your room right now? Do you have Pressure, David Bowie, Under Pressure? Okay. Remember, he's got the spike here, the whole rainbow, the 70s, 80s, David Bowie. Great artist, maybe too far out. But, a lot of people who, but, in other words, you have to realize that there are certain B states and do states, and what you then created, because with repetition and experience, that mood repeated over, multiple times, multiple days, getting the people pleaser, getting them, depleting your bank account to get them a gift, even though you went bankrupt, doing, going places, staying up too late, just things that you aren't good for you, and you just sort of always got on the lower rung. It's like a seesaw. You had to always defer to an abuser because they always clamor for the attention. They're louder. They're they're more pointed speech. What I would, that bitter sarcasm where it's sort of insulting in the same breath. Which meaning it's not meant to be funny. It's meant to be true. But then they're giving it to you with a hug. Oh, you're such a dodo, dum-dum. And then they kiss you, which is a really bad combo. They're sort of trying to then embrace and solidify for you. Oh, you are a dodo. You are a dum-dum. Well, that's pretty scary. Anybody gonna write that on your resume? How you really feel? So people then just do the cover up and try to fake it, but then there's a feeling of this indelible, and so they keep repeating the behaviors, and in other words, your body language still speaks the language of I've been victimized, I'm weak, I am not capable, I'm not competent, I can't do that, I'm not responsible, don't ask me, don't depend on me. It's just this avoidance. It creates then an avoidant behavior, which really doesn't get the job done. All the avoidance, because there's a B state that needs to be tapped into that's outside of the cycle of abuse. Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about the three brains. You should really watch the TED Talk just to learn a little bit. You don't have to have it memorized, but more, what is the takeaway for you is to understand then that an abuser relies, creates, predicts, and will, I don't want to say exasperate, but will continue to perpetrate. In other words, they'll continue to push the same abusive agenda, the same abusive demands, the same abusive talk downs. Talk to you like you're a toe and you're a person. Just total, just acting as if you don't have any learning, awareness, sophistication, other influences, other dreams, other hopes, other feelings, other than responding to an abuser's commands or demands. It's to the point where if you've lived in an abusive household, there's anger, violence, people hitting objects or you, or looks that could basically extinguish you, okay, like they had viper vision or something, that there's an emotional venom that will generally sting. We're talking about the B states that these perpetrators, the narcissist, the psychopath. So in an abusive relationship, it can be physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual, effing your thoughts up. Oh my God, my grammar. The teacher goes, you've got your sentence structure. You're going, oh my God, I'm sitting here. This is my major. I'm supposed to be really good at this stuff. And you're like, they tell you that and you're like, you think you will never, ever be able to succeed or do, it's just this slamming comment. These are designed to be one-way interactions. Rhetorical, meaning you don't have to respond. Have you ever been in a class and the teacher just throws a question out there? Do you think we should all, grow our own food? She's not looking for people to respond, but they're looking for a rhetorical question. So in other words, if you can understand what a rhetorical question is and be in that audience, you can also be there for yourself and develop a little bit more internal rapport. Internal rapport meaning B states, which is what the recovery dates are about. These are a must. It's not like, oh, should I go and release this and learn how to set this aside and have a better life? I mean, this is not a should. This is a must. When it gets to the point where within, I don't like what's coming out of me or what I'm hearing, seeing, and rather than getting triggered, just going, okay, there's something here that's going to bother me. So I'm going to just acknowledge and validate that. So you can get a conscious MB state, meaning that you can see that the feelings and connections are under your conscious control. When you get into areas of deep relaxation, meditation, becoming one with nature, becoming one, becoming at truth, coming at reflection, these certain things, and then realizing that sometimes the perpetrator of violence, they have, like that sandpaper in that automotive class, if you've ever seen, or a belt, or just think of it like a garbage disposal, okay? You might have been forced to really, work at people pleasing and fixing a lot of horrendous situations, or being involved in being personally scuffed. You might feel scarred, you might feel a deficit or a negative state. That B state, that is still the abuser. That's still you participating in the abuse. Oh, peace and harmony. I'm not participating in this. This happened to me. I would never consciously want to. Well, then you have to realize that there's a growth that can occur. I don't want to say something as simple as a thick skin, because it's not like that. It's a B state, which is global, which means it has within the ability to see and recognize and become, meaning having a physical state change, which you have rehearsed and practiced, which means if people didn't think it was so crazy, what I would really love to. And you might have seen this in a picture, or, not to impress anybody, but there's something really about you. And if you're getting nothing, that's okay too. And maybe there's just this nothingness. And what does that really mean? And chunk it down, because if you're not even developing the words yet, it's still in this global nothingness. And then so you're going to have to kind of revisit, what is this nothingness really mean? And it's sometimes scary to look at, because it's going to conflict with the abuse and abuser state. It's going to be able to, it's going to be like Teflon. It's going to have a slippery slide sort of understanding within, which is showing when you consciously say, you know what, man, my posture, my this, you're going, okay, and you realize where you have to adjust. And then just flow into it. Do not listen to any other enemy within. Just, because you can name that also. A lot of you might have really then endeared, meaning you might have really coddled and nurtured and said it's okay to yourself in the abuse. So you might have a lot of so you might have to understand, does it encase you? Is it internally? Is it in your neck? Do you feel it in your stomach? Oh, it's burning here. There's certain discomforts, especially when it comes to clarity, when you're separating and sort of separating from what is their opinion and why does it matter that I have to then confront, change, conflict, or avoid sort of those, or in other words, have the passivity, which means I just avoid and I don't have any because of fear of triggers. How has it impacted your social life? And so you have to look at understanding that there's a new gentle neural pathway that you can open, meaning instead of da 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 da, you're feeling and experiencing, and then name that. Okay, desiring, optimistic. What are some other B states which are more positive, powerful, and strengthening, which really sort of kind of push out those triggers? In other words, those triggers of people pleasing are kind of like little fingers, but they're about 30 miles, so yeah, 30 feet, a mile away. They're really kind of far away. And in other words, no, I'm not going to go get that gift just to people please. I'm not going to just sit and sulk just to people please. I'm not going to just sit and become a big blob or become too nameless. So you might, in your healing, you might need to come into what they call in Tao, the Lao Tzu, that book, the I Ching. He talks about, becoming the nameless. Okay, so there's a neutrality. These are states that might not have been big rewarded or payoff states, meaning people pleaser weren't there going, where after you reacted or, after you had ground yourself into the ground or you started a lot of conflict. You might consider it hatred, violation, violence, mean things, bad, negative, guilt, shame, abandonment, aloneness. You're wretched, you're terrible, you're disgusting, you're putrid, you're so disappointing. I mean, there's this rejection of your simple, basically showing up is basically what the abuser will do. They'll basically engulf. It's not that you were weak, but usually it is set up in a time when you were unaware, too young to know what to do. Okay, this is a problem, especially for children. If their parents are narcissistic or psychopathic, the kids do not have lives of their own, or really are they allowed to move freely about the cabin, because they are always trying to keep them at an arm's reach or leave them with a more negative tone, to try to keep that conflict rhythm and momentum going. They derive pleasure from conflict. They get a rise out of argumenting. They feel this is their personality. If they're a politician, if they're, somebody with a big ego, just those people who, you know what I'm saying? Their stomach is just gonna, in other words, there's just something about them that no one else has a chance. Those people who they're either the wealthiest, the biggest, the reason, whatever their reason, if it involves trying to hurt, shut down, nullify, put down, extinguish, cause to suffer rejection, or just cause to suffer, the grinding stone. It's not just about compromise. It's about, why does the narcissist, they use people for their satisfaction. And then when they want to come back to it like a pair of shoes, pants, or a hat, if that little shoes had got up and walking away on its own, i.e. you said, I'm out of here. But how can you say that when you're still caught up in a pattern that implicates the character, that you are? And you can say, well, what if my whole life is built on this? Then that's erroneous thinking and feeling. Okay, because you might be then holding on to that reactive state, like you're still, even though, what do you, where are you in the spectrum? After the abuse, are you in the self-devaluation, not taking care of yourself, footloose, fancy free, whatever, and or getting through things, meaning getting some space, not people pleasing, not saying yes when you mean no, not falling for someone's trap, not falling for never getting a chance to share your viewpoint, your ego, or trying to just be and receive. In other words, you don't want to have those negative tags. They're and realize, if you can realize now in the privacy of these videos, that there is no mind-body connection. And to realize, to get into that Dr. Joe Dispenza, just sort of the all neutral. You're not naming, you're not categorizing, you're not judging, you're not opinionating, you're just allowing yourself, even if you've never, you're just allowing yourself to be healed and be at one. In other words, just have that mesmerized state and just lock it in inside and keep doing it, meaning this is what I really need. I need to unpack, I need to decompress, de-thaw, get out of this junk, get out of here, get rid of Sin City, have a purge, have a house cleaning, get that toxic junk out of my system, whatever it is. Don't be afraid. Well, what if it's so much peace and harmony? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's what my trainer used to tell me back at my previous job, that I was able to become a top producer in, the top 75 out of close to 100,000. There's a lot of, I was able. And to then, what degree can you then own the positive? Especially if it conflicts or does not match the truth that the abuser, the perpetrator, is trying to assign to you. They're trying to do the rub-in. You're how the rub-in, maybe you know what it is, how it, and then call that manipulation. Call that what it is. But don't over idealize or over devalue. Get kind of a neutral, blended understanding as you practice. watch this video, practice neutrality, breathing, not assigning and labeling, not justifying or, having that same repertoire echoing within. In other words, these muscles don't sing that same ho hum, or in other words, to what degree do I need to detox from the other direction that I might have been going in order to become someone, which becomes to become bigger. But then if you're becoming and you still keep this tension, then your problems might get bigger. Oh boy, that's not fun. Anyone ever done that? Kept the problems going for years or decades until you're like, nope, okay, gotta get down to the real nit and grit of it. And that might mean accepting some truth about yourself that is a direct conflict with what you feel is your truth that the abuser or the perpetrator had assigned. In other words, your truth, your I am, is generally going to be sort of what they say, a lot of psychologists say, created first 7 years of your life, So if you have a real strong, you're and then you've got a negative following it, that's what they call in psychology is like negative validation. They've nailed that in with a nail and hammer. Have you ever seen the African fetish art where they're nailing? There was a great, at Indiana University, a great museum there where they had beautiful African art, a really impressive collection, which is very interesting to realize, the power of what they would call those fetish figures. But so your truth, you might want to learn, unpack. This is some time. So you might really want to understand your truth might have a negative. I am abandoned. I am in the cold. Like if you could just put it out there, just even if it's scary, if you were just like, if you had to go through a vomiting of what, and you could just see it, but it looked okay, not like vomit, like you could just withstand it, you'd go. What is your truth? I am, and then, but especially if it makes you feel scared, alone, okay, and then because what's very interesting or important is if something comes along that goes, man, great job, you're such a wonderful writer, you're such a great speaker, you're really great with animals, you're so this, and you're like, some people can't own a compliment, like in their deep down, like, or if someone wants, intimacy problems, in a commitment, there's intimacy issues, things aren't going. You're falling prey to someone else's opinion, and then you're living for that external, okay? And then if you're having that external always coming along, you're gonna perpetrate that. It's like you're still showing up for the same role. And you can then see if you can just say, okay, what is that role? Because you're going to pass up opportunities for promotions, getting your life in order, getting a little bit of, instead of being completely frazzled, fear, oh my God, you can't eat, sleep, you're really in it now, no, let's get out of those waters, those really crazy times. You must understand then that these B states then proceed, then how your future is going to be dictated or predicted, or the best way to change your future. Oh, I forgot what the saying was. It's like the best way to the best way to predict your future is to create it. That's the saying. The best way to predict your future is to create it. So to what degree can you own that your I am in the positive, to what degree are you still not in your full strength because part of you does not, your truth, it does not it does not resonate. The positive compliments, the positive, why don't you become the man that you want or the woman that you want, and not as, trying to stay in that same gaminess or that same cycle, that same intensity or way. Can you change a tradition without feeling guilty, wrong, immoral, or any other disempowered state, frozen, incapable, shaky? Okay, pen to paper. Okay, you need to, if you can look at it and look at that, how does that old truth, like if you can then kind of look at it and say, sort of that truth that your everyday experience is coming up against, if anything good comes up against that that doesn't match it, it's going to push it away. This is known as resistance. So if your truth is you're such a nah nah, or and you've something about that, then if someone gives you a compliment that could enlarge you, cause you to feel, thank you, I earned that. And if it does not match your truth, then you might not own that, see it, or receive it, and then grow and build on that. So you must look at and understand and come to a very neutral state. Practice and rehearse it. The recovery date, where you take some time out intentionally for you to take out that person and get it, that inner architect, that inner gentleman, that inner self-respecting, self-made woman, that that man of confidence that doesn't have to demean himself to get a woman's attention or respect. In other words, no, I'm not going to clean up your mess. No, I'm not going to scratch your back again. No, I'm not going to respond to that text. No, I'm not going to that same party. No, I'm not going to pursue living like that anymore. No, you know what? And those drives, can be very really revealing and go, you might be just busting out in tears. You might need to purge it out. Okay, so you might need to get that out and be able to look at it. And you go, oh my God, because of that, it made me so I was so shaky for hours and days and weeks and months, that those moments repeated over time become a mood, and a mood repeated over time becomes a temperament, and a temperament repeated over time becomes your personality. So if your inner truth is like still strung up, hung up, connected in a non-energetic way, but still connected, you got to look at unraveling that. Okay, and you can know, because if you have not then taken the time to enrich and know, okay, that a lot of, and then because what happens is a lot of people become feeling responsible for other people's negative situation and then trying to change it. Like they feel powerful by then change, the negative. So that becomes their warrior dance. That becomes what they do on the daily. That becomes their identity. Okay. And what if you go, man, this identity, what I've been working on, ain't getting me what I thought. And you can go, okay, then I can say, and you can realize and get some space and kind of put it out there. This, and then when it comes again, when you're really healed and it comes again, meaning that same, they want the text, they want the party, they cry, and then what are their a lot of triggers, especially around the holidays. People get very emotional. Oh, they get into these really heightened, elevated states. I mean, their lid flew off and their steam is burning everybody, okay, in eye distance, ear distance, and as well as the house and the garage. I mean, their their cries of suffering, like they know what to do to get people moving. So they will keep doing what's working. And if you keep succumbing to the abuse or the hover, oh yeah, let's just for the holidays. Wouldn't that be nice? No. Wouldn't that be nice? No. No, it's not. So when can you stand up for the abused? What does it feel like to stand up for the abused? And you might say, well, I don't want to be that person. But you might just, you might then need to say, I'm getting back, and this is like all about the book that I'm working on, because there's a lot of getting back to the blueprint, the drawing board, in outlook, like in terms of your outlook, in terms of your be states, when your should becomes a must. Like, this is absolutely going to take place, meaning I'm absolutely gonna stop falling for whatever. Maybe you're addicted to some sort of thing that you don't like, okay? Or you just say, you know what, I've been too inactive. Passivity will rob you of your life. When you come to that neutrality, you learn to understand, I would say, what it is to inhabit a little bit of grace and humbleness and humility, and decompressing. You might, this might be a new feeling that you need to exercise and work on with repetition and experience. If you've been triggered while driving, not going to drive that way anymore. Okay, burning my brakes down, rear-ending people. God, you see some cars. I mean, this lady is sideswiped. There's a complete hole. You can almost see her jacket through the door. I'm like, what are you people doing? It's like, what can be prevented? Okay, so for our viewers also who are asking, then what am I attracting? I'm still attracting these same phony types, the abuser types. They want me just for this. They do that. Or you're wanting to break this cycle. So you must just say, I am willing and allow to break this cycle. I allow to break this cycle. I allow. And I allow for something greater. So that means you're not going to work for it. Uh-oh. It's going to come to you. Oh, brother. Where is inspiration? When you might hear it fleeting and then you just don't pick up on it. You don't take action. You don't do anything. You don't pursue it. Your I am, the abused kid, teenager, 20-something, elderly. You're still, you see, oh my gosh, people can be, you can, taking in older people who are taking in kids who are on drugs, who they are still doing all their grocery shopping for, breaking their backs, buying their pop, probably giving them money to buy their drugs. These people are being taken advantage of and they don't know it. So, you have to understand what has you in that sort of flinching and then being able to become neutral. And practice and rehearsing that. And then allowing to see the results. In other words, it's going to be different. It's going to be, okay. It's going to be, allowing. It's going to be whatever that feels like. And if you can kind of get a big diagram of, what does it feel like when you're breaking the cycle? When I'm breaking the cycle and living in a better truth, it really looks like, what does it look like, feel like, especially if you're going through a separation, your vision is shattered. It's very frightening, especially when there's another, it's still kind of in your life. You need to process through this without the damaging or insults. Just get watertight on this. Be resolute, okay? And just say, I am resolute. I accept. And then you're going to understand what new behaviors, rhythm in the body, how to breathe again, how to relax. Okay, I was someone who, I used to do the sit-ups. So we're going to wrap this up in a little bit. And I had to give that up. And it used to worry me. It does not worry me now. But like perfection, what are some outcomes of being, perfectionism? No one accepts you unless you're perfect. So you've got, if you breathe, you might pop something. This is not a good way to live. Like, it's not healthy, and your organs do not appreciate being crunched in and trying to be treated that way, because then people begin self-inflicting and reinforcing just out of survival. Okay, so you have to know that this is kind of how it, just like if you've seen a shell, or like, the back of a shell, and it has all these different little layers, it's kind of like those sort of ripples that are within the body that sort of, it's electric pulses, driving pulse, ways of being, and so you must sort of look at and then use like color therapy. If it's too hot, use cool. If it's too cool, put in a little warm. Learn how to tune in and adjust and kind of get an understanding of what these triggers are. And then if you're going to give up something, like a great friend once told me, if you're going to give up something like a bad habit, what are you going to put in instead? If you're smoking, throwing away the cigarettes and starting walking, jogging, dancing, yoga. And give yourself a helping hand. Give yourself little reminders. Like in the book that I'm working on, you have to then consciously cue your subconscious for the state that you want it to be in. And the state meaning, how does it feel? What does it look like? How does it move? How does it carve out its articulation, its way of interacting and living and testing and developing reality with this in mind, because so that it becomes and exists as a living reality, meaning you are living in a healed, untriggered reality. Oh, what does that mean? If it means you're okay, and this directly conflicts with your truth, that's why you keep pushing it away. You're okay. Might not agree with the truth. Do you see where this becomes really important? And so if your truth is you're never okay, in other words, for some reason, you don't have to put anyone, but if that's, and then it scares you to be okay. So then we have to then look at that. Okay, then you can say, am I really scared to be okay? I'm okay being okay. I'm good, and then you're rehearsing that, practicing it, rehearsing, memorizing, repetition and experience, giving some cues, the recovery dates, giving your time set aside for you just to inhabit the space. And what I'm looking for is, for example, like let's say you are changing. You say, I really need to become more flexible. My body is becoming stiff. Pick up a book. These are really these are really cool. Pick up a deck, a yoga deck. I mean, let's say you just say, I'm learning a new move and what it means, and then maybe the history of it. So this is the tree. Stand erect, eyes focused on a single point. Shift your weight to one leg and raise your other leg and place the sole of your foot, okay, on your standing thigh. If your leg slips, hold your ankle with one hand. Once balanced, hold your arms either above your head, straight or out to the side, or with hands clapped in prayer position at the center of your chest. Count slowly to 10. Repeat on the other side. My foundation is firm. My being is flexible. What are the benefits? Improves the posture and elongates the spine. Okay, peace and harmony, needs and likes this. For congenital reasons. Strengthens the knees and ankles. Opens the groin. Helps with balance and centering. Okay, so can you see where one little change, investing in doing for yourself rather than another person? That is codependency. When you become dependent on taking care of another, you know, the fixer-upper, suddenly they're okay, you're looking for, because that's what you do so well, if you've been abused, I've been abused hammer, and you're going to build that same I've been abused house, and then begin to grow and understand and say, what I learned, from that neutrality is I am okay. And this causes me fear. So just put it out there, write it down. Because if you can write it down, it is very powerful. Once you kind of see it out there and you're going, oh, okay. That's what the morning pages are for. Sort of like the recovery pages, those, for if you can start writing and just getting a lot of gunk out. I hate being lied to. I hate being lied to. I hate being fake. I hate being fake. Whatever it is, get it out of your system. Your rant pages, your decompress pages, getting it out. Like things that what are you doing that you don't want? What are you doing that you don't want to do anymore? And own that. So if you I don't like the way I unload the dishwasher. I think it's menial. I think it's stupid. I'm throwing things. You're like, okay, do I really have to? Okay, and why is it bothering me? Because it's menial, because it takes time, because I'm not in a B state. So it comes right back to you. And the reason why is because you haven't inhabited that B state. Okay, and then gotten sort of a firm foundation and worked on you rather than working on other people. That's the foundation. And so to begin feeling okay with that investment, oh boy, you're like the first time investor, okay? It's a startup. Everybody's, you have to get rid of all those, failure statements. Those are all manipulation. So if you can realize you have a different positive motivation and sort of get in touch with that, and what does that positive mean, and allow that to ignite you and basically arouse some passion that is not causing you to do the same, where you're okay investing in yourself as a person, the things you've wanted to do or the things you've wanted to stop doing, rather than doing for them. Let's talk about their life. Isn't it great to see them and nobody talks about you? What about you? Okay, things are going to change when you change. Things don't change until things change. So let's be okay. Let's get on with it. Let's get that one little new stance, like a tree, and learn a little bit and appreciate. You don't have to learn things perfectly. You don't have to memorize the encyclopedia. You don't have to be a walking all that. Just allow, and then allow those to take root in whatever way that they do, and you'll see it coming forth and manifesting in the good. And just be humble. This is your buddy. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussions, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day.